You're listening to Torah with Simcha.
Dovi, do you want to come in?
I'm in and learn some Torah.
It's Motzei Shabbos we're holding right now. 3 days before Shavuos, we're in the Shloshis and Agbola. Because we currently have 4 Talmidim here.
Are you a Talmud today?
And I wanted to explain a new pshat in being a malach. I came across this pshat when I thought of one of my rebbeim from elementary school, which I've not had the opportunity to speak about yet, Rabbi Pollack ZatzaL. You see, when people think of a malach associated with the Rebbe, so people think of someone who's very refined in character. So then you have to fall onto the Lefton. You know, the person seems like a malach, he's just in a different world than you. So you can only learn from his words, but as Dovi pointed out, you can't really understand his actions. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
But Chazal actually tell us there's another definition of a malach. The Torah tells us that a malach has one mission. That's what a malach has. Once you learn like that, it changes everything. So I wanted to suggest like this. Those of us that were zoicha to have Rabbi Pollack as a Rebbe, no, he wasn't just a Rebbe who worked at Epstein Hebrew Academy, who I had for 2 years. Many people had him for 3 years, actually. Rabbi Pollack put everything he had, all of his resources, everything was there to accomplish one thing, and that was bringing people closer to Yiddishkeit. It's not just his Avos HaTorah, it was his Avos Hashem, and his Avos for Klal Yisrael. Let me give you some examples, because the examples help explain it much better than any description. There's so much that he did, which really had nothing to do with what he was getting paid to do. One example was so many times he would have the entire class over for Shabbos. Our entire class. I remember the house being jam-packed. And so, are you following? You have to realize that not everybody in the grade was from. Not everybody kept Shabbos. So he invited everyone over for Shabbos, and those people that were not Shomer Shabbos, they found a place to stay in the neighborhood. Maybe they stayed at his house. I don't know where they stayed. But we all had the Shabbos Sudas together. A ton of tables. He didn't have a big house, but we all got in there. And you have to realize that in case people think the classes were small, so this wasn't a big deal, actually the grades were doubled over. Certainly by the time I was in 7th grade, we had 2 grades under one Rebbe. The Shabbos Seudas were clearly made to be as enjoyable as possible. And he put forth a lot of hishtadlus to do it. It wasn't just that we had the regular benchers and sung Zmiros. He actually came up with things on his own. Things that I'm not even going to remember right now. But one of them that is impossible not to remember is singing the Uncle Moshe song, Big Gedaya Gumber. But I'm almost positive Uncle Moshe's song does not go on for the number of pages that he handed out. Maybe it does. I don't know, but it kept going on and on. His song, just all these different cases, we sung the whole song. There were some other songs too. So it's not just that he had everyone over, which was one would think is a tremendous inconvenience, not just for him, but for his wife and family. But he also put forth a lot of time either printing out these papers, and there's a lot of stuff I'm sure others could tell you that went on there that I don't even remember. Another thing is he asked the class, he said he wants to increase the learning in the class. So I'm not sure how he worded it, but he decided that he's going to give shiurim at Young Israel at night, and the goal would be to finish the Masechta. And there's no way he was getting paid for this. Anybody who wanted to come could come. If they didn't want to come, they didn't have to come. Another interesting thing, however, is that there were two people that used to learn at Young Israel at night, a few times a week, and they would get, at least one of them would get very excited about his learning. And Rabbi Pollack wanted the class to see it, because he wanted people to grow in their love for Torah. And, you know, we didn't really have access to a Beis Medrash. If you leave the Agura out of the picture, which for whatever reason that was being left out of the picture, so then we don't really have access to a real Beis Medrash. This was all we had. Now the two people happened to be my father and Dick Greenwald. Those were the two people. My father would read the Aruch HaShulchan, and he gets very excited with, holy cow, and I never saw anything so provocative. The more yeshivish way of wording it is, I've never seen such a chiddush, but it's constant. So Rabbi Pollack wanted to time the class in such a way that people would come and get to see the learning that's going on. Perhaps there were others learning there too. I don't remember there being anyone else learning there. And I remember Rabbi Pollack pointing that out, why he wanted to do it as well. Rabbi Pollack was my very first Gemara Rebbe. He was my very first Gemara Rebbe. We learned the Perek Elu Metzias in 5th grade. And I remember I would come home at night, kind of strange that this happened, but I would come home at night all excited about learning. And I would then, my father, he said, okay, he'll learn. My father really was more into the Aruch HaShulchan, but he said if I explained to him the Gemara, so he'll learn. So we would learn Elu Metzias, and we actually would sit at our dining room table, and we were there for hours. Now, there was a problem with this though. My mother had a very big problem because there was tons of homework I had to do, and I did nothing. I didn't do any homework at all. So we would learn, I remember, till 11 o'clock at night. There were nights it was till 11 o'clock. My mom would say, I have to go to bed at 10. But we were learning till 11, and then I'd go to sleep. I don't know if I did the homework or if I didn't do the homework, but at some point in the year, someone contacted Rabbi Pollack. I would assume it was my mom. I can't envision my dad doing it. I would assume it was my mom to contact him to say that Simcha's not doing any of his homework because of the Gemara, and I assumed she told him to let me know, because he did come over to me, and it was during recess, and he pulled me over to the side, and he said, you should know you're giving a tremendous nachas to your father. He loves it when you come home and you're learning. You should get around to doing your other homework too, but you're giving a tremendous nachas. It was something like that. I really have to mention another part to this. I also had another Rebbe that year, and I thought about this earlier today, and that was my Uncle Jerry. Most people don't know this, but I used to learn with him every Shabbos during Shalosh Shudas, every week. Only that year, 5th grade. My father canceled it because he said I was coming late. I don't think it should have been canceled, but could be the reason I know the Gemara so well that year is also attributed to him. He was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. A lot of people maybe don't know that either. Rabbi Pollack's son, I was good friends with his son. His son had a photographic memory, and he got it from his father. Photographic memory means you just see picture, and you just have the whole image is memorized in your head. Like a camera, like a photograph, a camera. I don't know if it's famous or not, but there's something called the pin test. And the pin test is, you would take a pin, you open up a Gemara, and certain Gedolim will be able to tell you every letter the pin goes through. So let's say, if I say Daf Yud Beis, this pin is going through the Hey on the top line. Now, please tell me all the letters and the rest of the Gemara where it goes through. My cousin told me that on Purim, they used to give Rabbi Pollack the pin test, and he passed. Okay, it's so hard to believe that if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I was told this twice, and he would do it on Purim. Maybe it was done, maybe he didn't really want it known. Maybe he had to drink first before he was willing to do it. I don't know. But there's no question he was an enormous Talmud Chacham. Here's some things that were very unique about him as well. He learned in Yeshiva 770, so he was Chabad, he was Lubavitch. But, you know, people say that Hasidim learn Chasidus. This is what I've always heard. That a lot of yeshivas learn Moser, but Hasidim learn Chasidus instead of Moser. But when I was in 5th grade, I'm not exactly sure. When I was in 5th grade, Rabbi Pollack started this thing. I don't know at what point in the year, but he started this thing where he would write on the chalkboard a mimer from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter every day. I grew more that year than any other year. You know, people say when someone becomes bar mitzvah, like, what does that mean? Yesterday they were not a bar das, and today they are a bar das. Like someone just waved a magic wand and poof. Yesterday they didn't have das. They didn't have, what do you define, brains? I don't know. Today they do. Poof. Well, it never felt like that. But 5th grade felt like that. 5th grade, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, before 5th grade, I felt like a child. And after 5th grade, if someone would have told me like there was some type of neshama that got added, like, by the way, there was some neshama that we added to you, like if someone told me that, I would believe it. So I don't know if it's the age or if it was from Rabbi Pollack. And it was the first time I was learning Gemara, the first time we were learning Musar every single day. We had to write it down. Each mimer from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. We have, I believe it came from Or Yisrael. I think we have the sefer here. We have. One of the most impressive things that would happen is at the end of the year, there would be something kind of like a mesiba. I don't know, a party at the end of the year. We sung some songs, the parents were invited. I think it was just his grade. And he tried to make it entertaining. He bought everybody a kazoo. He bought everyone a kazoo, and then one kid was to play, I think it was called the washboard. He did things all the time to make things as enjoyable as possible. So it was clear that he wasn't just doing a job. He was there on a mission. Just like a malach has one mission, he was there for one mission. He was sent to St. Louis like a shliach for the purpose of chinuch, being mechanech, not just his students. I mean, he was completely dedicated to his students, but not just his students in any particular subject. It included all of Torah in every single resource that he had. But here's the most impressive part. He gave us Sfarim. He's getting Parnasa as a mechanech, probably not like tons of money lying around, but these things cost a lot of money. And people would get Sfarim. People, regardless of what background they were coming from, he would buy different Sfarim for different people. People who love to do paperwork grew a lot from other things that he had, which I never did, but all the grammar, the Chumash, he taught us Gemara and Chumash. The Chumash, people who did it picked up a lot of grammar. I remember just parents talking about it, even after 3rd grade. Parents would be speaking about how impressed they were about this system that he had, whatever he had. I grew more from the Gemara and from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. time I ever stayed up all night on Shavuos, we're holding just a few days before Shavuos, was with Rabbi Pollack. It was 5th grade. I never knew I'd be able to stay up all night. And this was by the old Young Israel. This was, yeah.
You know, we always said that it's better to go to sleep when your mother tells you to than to the whole night.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Why don't you keep it away?
Keep it up aimed into. So we learned Megillas Rus. I think we learned the entire Megillas Rus. And there was a long walk to get there. A long walk coming back. It was a 20-minute walk. This is before Young Israel moved into the University City area where the Aguda currently is. He stayed up all night teaching us Megillas Rus. Rabbi Pollack is most famous in the community. The community never had him as a teacher. So when you don't have someone as a teacher, he a lot of times could become famous for other things. And Rabbi Pollack became famous for his humor and these pranks that he would do. But he always said he'll never do a prank. There's probably a more yashar word than prank on someone who doesn't ditch it themselves. Like, there was only certain people he did it on, and it is my personal belief that he didn't just do it for no reason. What you have to realize is that humor could totally distract people so that there's no lashon hara said about anything. What basically happens is when there's a lot of politics going on in the community, so if there could be a humorous story associated with every single topic, so then what ends up happening is the topic's brought up, and then the next person's like, "Oh, did you hear Rabbi Pollack did blah blah blah?" Then the topic quickly, even before any lashon hara started, it switched over to that. Then you hear about the prank, everyone's laughing, hee, and then once that they forgot about it, they go on to the next topic. That's what happens. So you could say he just did pranks for the sake of doing pranks, but that doesn't make any sense because he was a big time Talmid Chacham. Every part of his life was dedicated to Torah and to bring people closer to Yiddishkeit. So we could say some of these stories. Stories are a lot of fun, of course. The challenge, however, is to find a direct connection to the chinuch, or do you have to search with a little bit more depth, which is something that I just did. So before we get to that part, I'll just say another thing. When he taught, there was HaKadosh Baruch Hu came into the room to teach as well. And I know the Gemara Brachos tells us that. The Gemara, we know that there's a Hashras HaShechina, even when one person is learning Torah. For sure, when Torah is being taught, especially to Tinoka Shel Beis Rabin, to children, there's no question there's a Hashras HaShechina. But that's based upon what the Gemara says. I want to bring a couple examples of where it was clear there was someone helping him in the room at the time. Okay, these are the two examples. I'm sure there's many more. The year was 1991. I'm going to first speak about where I was during this time because I wasn't there for either story. But let's just go to 1991. I was in 3rd grade. Okay, in Epstein. So we had, our teacher was Mrs. Brooks. The only thing is that sometimes in Epstein, for one subject, they would switch teachers for some reason. Okay? So I don't remember the name of the teacher who had the other class. So, but that's the teacher who came in. She came in the afternoon to teach us science that day. So she was a science teacher. So going back to 3rd grade, she comes in. It's February 1991. And this day is unbelievably warm. It's just out of nowhere. The temperature went up to 82 degrees that day. Winter, it was in the middle of winter, but it was 82 degrees. And ironically, my parents were on a plane to Florida for spring training. So they were escaping the winter, going to Florida. Meanwhile, it was 82. My father always joked about that happening, that the day he leaves, it's going to be real warm. And it happened. The day he left, it was real warm. It was just beautiful weather. There was no rain either. There were no thunderstorms either. It was just sunny and warm. I remember going out for recess. It was totally beautiful. And we come back, and the teacher's teaching science. Now, we're up in the science book. We're up to the topic of weather. And we're up to the topic of hail. That's what we're up to. So she goes to the chalkboard. In those days, of course, we had a chalkboard. The teeth, it's like hard to believe how anyone could survive with a chalkboard and the teeth clenching like goosebumps.
Oh,
But I don't know, I hate it. So she's about to go up to the chalkboard and draw a diagram of hail. It's the last thing anybody wants. But Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, at that second, golf ball sized hail starts pouring out of the sky, out of nowhere. And she said, well, actually, we don't need a diagram. We could just go look at the hail. So everybody got up, went to the window, looked at the hail. It was hailing. There was no thunder. It hailed for a little bit. Then it stopped hailing. The sun came out, and it was sunny and warm again. Just the golf ball ice was all over the place. In fact, even a few hours later, I remember when I got home, there still were some golf ball ice, even in my backyard. I remember our babysitter, my parents were in Florida, so the one staying with us, her name, I believe, was Yocheved Williams. I remember that babysitter and the golf ball ice in our backyard. Okay, so it was a pretty phenomenal thing that went on in our third grade class. But meanwhile, let's get back to Rabbi Pollack's class, and I'll tell you what was going on in his class at the same time that year, 1991, February. So they were learning about the 10 makos, and he was asking, what is the definition of each one? He said, dam. The class said blood, tzvardeya, and then someone, say the initials E-N, he yells out, hail! And it wasn't hailing when he yelled this out. And before Rabbi Pollack had a chance to respond, golf ball-sized hail starts coming out of the sky. That's this one story. I want to suggest that was HaKadosh Baruch Hu at work, and I'll explain why. You see, the last thing a Rebbe wants to do is to embarrass a student. If a student says hail to tzvardeya, so usually what happens is the Rebbe, like if the Rebbe asks a question, and then a student gives an answer, and it's really not a good answer, so the Rebbe will say like, that's a very nice thought. He'll be like, Reuven, that's a very nice thought. I like that thought and that creativity, but it's actually not the right answer. That actually answers a different question. Like you try to validate the question and make the student feel very good about themselves. Right. So the question is, what are you going to do over here? Here, it's Tzvardeya. This one Talmud yells out, hail. So, to me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu came in and saved the day. Because it started hailing. That distracted everyone from the whole thing. Everyone got up to look at the hail. The other story is just a time, sometimes classroom doors are open. You open them. Now, the way to open them is you open them, and they have a little stopper at the bottom of the door. So the stopper makes it, what?
Stopper on the top.
Fine, you have it on the top of the door.
We also have, they can just stay open.
Okay, fine. Now, the problem is, once the stopper's down, the only way to really close the door is you have to put the stopper up again and then close the door. You could try to close the door without putting the stopper up, but it's going to be very hard to get it closed. You have to pull with all your might because the stopper is a good stopper. So, this one I know was David Elman, that it makes a difference, but my Pollack guy said, David, can you please close the door? And apparently everybody remembers this. David looks at the door, and the door just closes. It just closed.
Because it was windy.
No, well, the way the story goes is that there was no reason for it to close. The story was said repeatedly, right? Pollack used to say the story over, like this. So, to me, it's like, now, there's many different ways one could understand it, but when you have, we know the Tinoka Shabbos Rabin, the Torah of children, is the most precious thing to Hashem, and maybe that 1 second of closing the door would cause a second of Bittul Torah. I don't know what the pshat is, but also when things happen, people remember even the class better. They remember the class better. Now, before we get on to the fun stories, some of them will require reflection to figure out how they fit into the chinuch agenda, and some of them may not. But here's one thing. Whenever you have Kedusha, a Rebbe of mine told me this in Ner Yisrael, and we learn this out, the Torah teaches us this. Whenever there's true Kedusha, we have a big problem, because the Satan will not allow true Kedusha to exist. And that leads us to a big issue with Mashiach, because the Satan won't let there ever be a Mashiach, because that's, first of all, that's when the Satan's over with. So, what does Hashem do? So what Hashem does is He hides the Kedusha in total shmutz. So it's true Kedusha is always covered with shmutz. Okay? So you go back, that's why the whole lineage of Mashiach is these strange stories that seem so forbidden, but yet they were so permitted. Things happen just to keep the Satan quiet. Like David and Melech, right.
Like, he was totally...
People thought it came from a forbidden relationship, a mamzer. The Sanhedrin, I remember there being a medrash saying that whenever anything was stolen in the town, the Sanhedrin would say, David did it, David did it. When Shmuel was given a prophecy that one of Yishai's sons is going to be king, Yishai brought out all his sons, and whichever one the oil was going to jump to, that one was going to be king. So they did it, but the oil didn't jump to anyone. So Shmuel said, is this all your sons? And Yishai said, I would need to look at the Pesukim, but at some point he did bring up the fact that David HaMelech, David was not HaMelech at that time, but David wasn't there. He said, these are all my sons, unless you want me to bring David the mamzer from the field. But he's obviously not going to be Melech. But Shmuel said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I guess you have to bring him from the field. And David came in, and the oil jumped to him. And that's in Hallel. It's a beautiful song. That's when we say, I thank you, Hashem, because I was impoverished. All Evan Masabonim, the stone that was disgusting, Haisel Rosh Pina, became the head of, like, each thing, what was, it was all bad, disgusting. This now became great. This David HaMelech, we all thought he was a no good for nothing. He actually was kosher the whole time. So, and once the person is like a revealed leader, the Sultan leaves them alone. I don't know how that works. So I kind of think, right, Pollack lucked out, in quotes. There's no such thing as luck. But I kind of think that his humor, the Sultan left him alone because the humor covered it all up. Whenever his name came up, it was always associated with humor, so the Sultan wouldn't even look there. He was left to teach. There's stories of other Talmidei Chachamim that we have a story of the Stei Chemed, where his maid made up a whole story of that he did something inappropriate, and the Stei Chemed had to leave town, and that's an example of where things look so bad, and the Satan just says, "Oh, he's not kadosh," but really nothing ever happened. The end of the story is.
Can't the Satan hear whatever we're saying right now?
So I don't know. It's possible the Satan could hear but can't read our thoughts, because it seems to me like the Satan. I was thinking about it. It seems like the Satan could hear, and if all the Satan hears is lashon hara, then the Satan leaves the person alone. So by the steichem, and all the Satan heard was lashon hara. Really, when someone paid the maid to make the story up because someone was jealous of the steichem, so she was paid to make this disgusting story up, whatever the story was. He had to leave town. With that, the Satan left it alone. The Satan, I guess, didn't really know what happened. I don't know what the Satan knows, but the Satan doesn't know. So over here, the humor. It was all good. It's kulei tov, and the humor maybe is what did it. Okay, so let's get to the fun stories over here. So there was a year when the Pope was headed for St. Louis. It was all over the newspapers, all over the headlines. So the Vad Ha'ir in St. Louis, they got in their mailbox a letter, and it was a very interesting letter, and there was a tremendous commotion that happened because of this letter. I don't know exactly what happened, but the letter went on to say that, as you may have heard, the Pope will be coming to St. Louis on such and such a date. We heard that you have these holy waters which are available for immersion, and the Pope needs to use these waters. Do you mind? Could he have permission to use the waters? Now, the waters that it's being referred to is the mikvah. The story goes, what? So the Pope is the Christian, let's say we have Moshe Rabbeinu, they have Bilam, right? Bilam was the Navi for them. Moshe was our Navi, so they're completely different. So we have our leaders. The Pope is not Jewish. The Pope is their leaders. So, so then the way the story, I heard it a few times, Rabbi Pollack came in, he read the letter, and he just said, Rabbi Pollack. Like he knew right away this was written by Rabbi Pollack, and that was that.
What do you mean? It was written by
Right, Pollack made the whole thing. Just, I don't know what the kavanah was. Right. It was just, the Pope doesn't want to use the mikvah. I don't know what pshat is. Another time, so back in Epstein, Rabbi Ravinsky had a...
What was the other school?
One second, Torah prep. Rabbi Ravinsky had a fundraising project. He would get money for the school. Now, this fundraising project consisted of buying or getting used cars and then selling them. It was something like that. So, usually in the mornings, you would find a used car somewhere in the Epstein Hebrew Academy parking lot. Sometimes you would find one used car. Sometimes two used cars. There was one morning, the entire parking lot was packed with used cars, and no one was able to find a place to park. At least just cars that are, I don't know, used. It's just cars. Just cars that were already owned, and he's selling them to someone else. So at least Rabbi Pollack was not able to find a place to park. So a letter got put into all of the teachers' mailboxes that apologizing for this situation. It said, we're terribly sorry about the inconvenience that Rabbi Ravinsky's fundraising program has caused. The school has made arrangements with the company across the street that we will now be allowed to use their parking lot to park the cars. Unfortunately, they're charging, I'm going to make up a number here because they're charging $70 a month, but the school has been kind and will contribute half of that. So it's only going to cost you $35 a month. Okay? It was signed, the story goes, it was signed by the principal, and there was a tremendous uproar. All the teachers were blasting into the office saying, what is with this $35? We have to park across the street. Well, really, it was all written by Rabbi Pollack. Another time, they were closing down a classroom. I don't know the exact story, but there was lots of furniture, random pieces of furniture that was in all the classes. Just one day, just extra furniture that was never there before. So some other letter went out saying, due to this, we will be using the classrooms we'll be continuing to use the classrooms to store all of this furniture, and the list went on, and the teachers were having they're all panicking about we don't even have enough room to do this, and how could they would go to Rabbi Lefton, the principal, like, how could you make this, and then everything's like, what's going on here? Who's putting furniture in the classroom? But if you want to connect it to chinuch over here, I do remember one. I don't know where it was coming from, but there's a few stories here that actually are connected to chinuch. Number one day, so Rabbi Pollack bought this electronic whoopee cushion, okay, and an electronic whoopee cushion is you press the button and it makes the sound on the other thing. But he's put the whoopee cushion speaker. He put the whoopee cushion speaker underneath Rabbi Leibtag's chair in his office. It was underneath the chair in his office, and he brought the remote control into our classroom. So, Rabbi Pollack was asking questions on the Gemara, and he said anyone who gets the question right can come up and press the button. And he told us exactly where it was. Rabbi Leibtag was having a meeting, and Rabbi Leibtag, you knew there was something going on because in the middle, Rabbi Leibtag just opened up the door and was like looking in. Everyone looked normal, and then he went back to his office.
Well, I'm saying, did Rabbi Leibtag know?
So, the way it was presented was that he didn't know, but I don't know. How could he not have, it has to be that they worked it out. I don't know. It must have been like he was in on it. He was in on it. I don't know, though. The way, maybe he wasn't in on it. I don't know, but Rabbi Pollack did anything he can to get us into learning. Anything. It didn't matter what it was. If it's an electronic whoopee cushion, if that's what's going to get us to pay attention to the Gemara, if that's what's going to give us an Avos HaTorah, then we're buying an electronic whoopee cushion. If it takes putting it underneath the principal's chair, well, the principal also has an obligation to transmit Avos HaTorah. So he also is going to play a role in this. That could very well be. It doesn't matter. Okay, it's under his chair. He's at a meeting. But the main thing here, you come to Epstein, you're going to love Torah. He's going to speak to the 5th grade mind. What does a 5th grader want to do? They want to press the button. That's what they want to do.
What do? It just makes noise.
Yeah, that's what it does.
Why is it so cool?
Because if the principal's in a meeting
I'm saying,
and someo's making that noise,
buy it? Why is it so
Well, he bought it in order to get us to love Torah.
Like, why would anyone else want to buy it? Just a question that.
I don't know. Maybe it was meant for Rabbi Pollack to buy. One time I remember it was the very beginning of April. So my class, we decided to play, what? We decided to play an April Fool's joke on Rabbi Pollack. And we all hid. We went into the gym and we hid. Now, this gym, it was a very interesting gym. It had these mats that were just hanging up on the wall, and you could easily hide behind the mat, and basically nobody would know who's there. I mean, you could see like some feet on the bottom, but you had to look and see the feet. So there was nobody in Rabbi Pollack's classroom, and he didn't know where anybody was. And the thing is, it was April 1st, so we were playing April Fool's joke, and finally we came out, and we come back into the class, and he's giving us mussar like crazy. Like, how could you, giving us how this was wrong and blah, blah, blah. But then he, see, there was something interesting in back of him. In back of him, he had those, do you guys use the projector? Not a smart board, right? Like a projector, you put like, Weissman probably uses it.
Yeah, we have one.
Like you pull the curtain down, you pull the thing down.
That?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have one.
So it was just very interesting. We came back in the classroom and just that thing was pulled down. Like, and he's just like that. Like, I was like, what is behind that thing? There's for sure something behind that thing, because you don't just give mussar with that thing pulled down. And then when he's finished, he just like put the thing up and said April Fools. Meaning he did it back to us. Like, all that mussar didn't, he's not really angry at anyone. But really he got the job done, because he did give us mussar, but April Fools, he didn't get so he got the job done, but he's not really angry at anyone. So he used, it was different like creative ways to give us mussar that would actually work. Not just get angry. If it wasn't for April Fools, if it wasn't for that thingy, I don't know what would have happened. He wouldn't have said a word maybe. Another time we were learning a Mishnah, I believe it was a Mishnah, and he said we're going to learn the Mishnah, first we're going to do it inside, and then we'll do it outside. Now, so, that means first we're going to read it, first we're going to read it inside, and then we'll explain it. We'll explain it outside.
We usually do the opposite.
You usually do the opposite. So you read it inside.
Now, we usually learn the pasuk, and then we'll read it inside.
Now, it was snowing like crazy outside. I just remember the curtains were up, and it was snowing, and, okay, he leaves the room, and then a second later, he's outside, the windows are open, and he's explaining the Mishnah outside. So, and it's pouring snow. And he's like, well, we did it inside, now I'm doing it outside. We're all in the classroom, but he's just out standing by the window, the windows are open, and he's explaining it outside. And for some reason, the whole time, I had a feeling he was going to do it. Like there was something about the way he kept saying, we're going to do it outside. We're going to do it inside, then we're going to do it outside. But I don't think anybody else thought. I don't know, it was just, right. So, if you just have a job, you're getting paid to go and teach, you just do your job, make it as simple as possible and get out of there. You have a family, but it wasn't like that with him. It was, make it as enjoyable as possible for the students. If you have to stand outside in the bitter cold with the snow, and he always wore short sleeve, by the way. He always wore short sleeve. I don't know why, but he did. So there was no coat or anything. He was just out there with the short sleeve, and that was that. And speaking of that, someone might say, oh, it's not healthy to do that. So, actually, he actually was a good role model of health, because there was a certain point he started to bike ride to school. He said he did it because it was healthy, but also during recess, he said he wanted all of us to jog one lap around the baseball and football field before we do our recess. He was a very l'shem shamayim person. I meant to say that in the beginning. I think I described that, but he was a very l'shem shamayim, and that's how he taught. That's the l'shem shamayim recess.
Also, you want to help them have good health in order to learn. If you don't
Right.
have good health, then you can't learn.
Right. So he was he was like completely l'shem shamayim. There was no other reason he could be doing all this other than he loved Hashem. He loved our neshama. He loved us, and he wanted to spread Torah to us, and he wanted to make Yiddishkeit be as geschmack as possible, and he'll do whatever he can. Think about it this way. Someone who buys an electronic whoopee cushion, the truth is, I don't really think the principal was in on this at all. I think the principal did not know that it was there, and he was risking his job. In a certain way, he's risking his job to put an electronic whoopee cushion underneath the principal's chair. But to Rabbi Pollack, it was, he'll do anything to get us into learning. And if for some reason, I guess maybe he saw like we're not getting it, so for some reason the Gemara isn't working today, so it hasn't been working for the past 2 weeks, so we're going to go out and buy an electronic whoopee cushion, and we'll do it that way. This is desperate. We're in desperate times. That's what we need to do. Another time, back to the projector thing, we actually had a projector and we had a thing. And he told us that he was given a warning that Rabbi Leibtag is coming into the classroom tomorrow to observe the class. That was the warning. Just he got a letter. Yeah, he got a letter saying that Rabbi Leibtag will be watching his teaching tomorrow. And tomorrow was also the day that he was going to be using a projector. So he said, we're going to do a little trick or something. He said he's going to have the projector like this. So you put the chumash is the projector piece of chumash is on the projector, and then you see it on the board, and it's straight.
That's what we did.
But he
That's
said,
what we did last year.
but he said when Rabbi Leibtag is in the back, he's going to gradually tilt the paper this way, and we're going to see it gradually go like that, and he wants the whole class to move our heads gradually with the paper, and then he's going to put the paper this way, and he wants to see like how long it takes before Rabbi Leibtag or like chaps, there's something off here. There's just something, what is going on? He's just going to have everyone go like that, and like this, and that was another thing. I don't remember, but usually when you turn off the lights, put the projector on, people can go to sleep. But it was like, okay, Baruch Hashem, we have Rabbi Leibtag, we could turn this into a whole entertainment thing, so it keeps us into the learning. There was a lot of things. He bought some other electronic devices that made some strange sounds that would just go off at random times, and just it was just to get people, like, keep them involved in the various things. This is an interesting story, and anybody who was there in the year it's impossible. Anyone who was there in 1994, it's impossible to ever forget this. Ever. It's okay. And I'll tell you, though, a little bit of an introduction of what was going on with me, because it adds a little bit to the story. So, this story happened on a Monday morning, but let me get back to Sunday. So, Sunday, in those days, we were in junior high. In our secular studies, we had a teacher, her name was Mrs. Engel, and she started to give these tests every day, but no one liked tests, so she changed the name of the test to assessment. And she had this whiteboard, and it would always say assessment tomorrow. So, and every day it was just like assessment. So now there was a major assessment coming up on that Monday, and I did not want to fail, but it was social studies. It was like history. It's the hardest subject for me. It's the most stuff I'm not really interested in. So I kept pushing it off to the last minute. So it's Sunday night, and I really wanted to do well, and I realized it's not going to happen. So I started saying Tehillim. I just asked Hashem to help me. Like, I think I was even crying. And I remember it was March. It was beautiful outside, because I was thinking, is there any possible way school could be canceled? And I was thinking, like, could there be a snowstorm? No, can't be a snowstorm. So I don't really have an Eitzah. I don't know. But maybe Hashem does. So I was saying Tehillim, and I figured that's all I could do, because to start studying now isn't going to work. No, because it would take like 15 hours to study, and Tehillim, even with crying, Tehillim just takes like 30 minutes. So that's what I did. Okay? The next morning, okay, it's sunny, beautiful out, no snow, of course. Carpool comes, get into the carpool. We pull up into the Epstein parking lot, and Rabbi Pollack is standing outside the entrance of the school, and he's going like this, like, I don't know, he's going like this, like smiling. He's like, no school today, no school today. Okay, so the first thing you think is that this must be some joke. Like, of course there's school today. But I was thinking like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there really is no school today. Like maybe, and then, so the person driving us in the carpool said, why is there no school today? Like he said, because there's been an asbestos outbreak. So there really was no school. School was canceled for 2 days because apparently the janitor left the water on overnight, and the school was made of this insulation from the 1920s, which is poisonous, but you never breathe in the poison as long as the insulation or whatever it's called stays there. Once there's a flood and the water is dripping down to the basement, so all of that gets put into the air, so we're not allowed in the school. They closed off the school, and school was closed for at least 2 days. Not only that, the school remains closed off. Part of the school remained closed off for months and months. The school bought trailers, and we had classes in the trailers. And you know what? It may not have been 19... I know we... What? Maybe something like that. It may not have been 1994. I know we were learning in trailers in 1994. The weather was just crazy. Maybe the trailers... I remember days walking out, it was 70. Then come back from class, it was in the 20s. It was just like, you go from the trailer to the thing. It was like those trailers were crazy. It's impossible for anyone to forget it. And that's what happened. That wasn't as far as I know, it was not a Rabbi Pollack prank. It wasn't him who left the water on. As far as I know, it was a janitor who left the water on. Over the years, I've had many mechanchim, right? Many. But with Rabbi Pollack, there's something very unique. In that not only was there a kesher with him, but I knew the family. His oldest son was in my class, and I was close friends with him. Like, really close friends with him. We used to play baseball, 1-to-1 baseball. I don't know how we did it. I think I knew how we did it, but my father would pitch the ball. We would go to that park over there, whatever, and every Sunday we would go out and we would play. It was just me and him. We would go out, and then we had 1-to-1 football in December. It was always these 1-to-1 games, which are impossible to be 1-to-1. I always say the reason I love tennis is because it's 1-to-1. You don't need to call up a billion people. But then I think back, I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's apparently a way to play baseball 1-to-1. I don't know, maybe he has a photographic memory. He's now living in Bnei Brak, and he's considered a respectable Talmid Chacham, even in Bnei Brak, Shlomo. But I remember going to his house, we would play kickball, And it's not just Shlomo. Shaya wasn't in my grade, but all his children, all the ones that I know, they're all Talmidei Chachamim. I don't know I think there's a younger girl I don't know, and the youngest boy I don't know, but we even had Yosef learned in Telz. So when we lived by Telz, he actually ate by us a few Shabbosim. So that's how I got to know Yosef a little bit. And Zalman, I remember over a summer, we learned B'chavrusa, and it's just it was something unique that I don't usually get to know Rebbeim's children so much for whatever reason. Either they're already grown up and out of the house, or in yeshiva, they go to a different yeshiva, or it's also not so the Gemara actually asks a question. There's the Gemara somewhere, and it says, why is it Talmidei Chachamim are not zoichet to have children who are Talmidei Chachamim? That's a question somewhere in Shas. So, well, we do have Talmidei Chachamim who have children who are Talmidei Chachamim, but you see from that Gemara, whatever Pshat is, you see that it really there's a special tzchus over there for someone to have, not only are they a Talmid Chacham, but their children's a Talmid Chacham. And I don't know at what point we're going to end, but here's something. I know, so here's something very important, Bill. So people will say, if you go back to the year 2001, everyone will say to you, they'll say everybody knew where they were on 9/11. On September 11th, 2001, when the Twin Towers exploded, people will say yeah, everyone remembers where they were. I think with Rabbi Pollack, that was also 2001. In January, I remember it being January, but if I'm wrong, it was sometime in the winter. And I think everyone, I think in the St. Louis community, there's no way to know for sure, but remembers exactly where they were when they heard that he was nifter. I remember Rabbi Pollack ZatzaL. He was nifter, I think the age was 39. He was nifter at the age of 39. My personal feeling is, there was a period of 1996 to 1998 where there were a number of tragic deaths in both St. Louis and Chicago. A number of children. Yeah, but it was like the tzaddik of every shul had a child who passed away. And I remember in Chicago, Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg ZatzaL came from Eretz Yisrael. He's one of the Gedolim. And there was a Shaila Tshuva session in the Lakewood Kollel. And I was there. And one of the questions asked to him is that there's been an enormous amount of tragedies over the past year. What could we do? What are we doing wrong? I don't remember his answer. But to me, it felt like, HaKadosh Baruch Hu first brings Yisurin. It was clear that it was like the tzaddik of every shul lost a child. In fact, the Pollacks actually also lost a daughter. I think she was a few weeks old, maybe a few months old. But to me, it was like taking Rabbi Pollack was like that was the Beis HaMikdash of St. Louis. That was everyone knew his greatness in chinuch. It was well known. Everyone that's as much as people spoke about the humor. Parents did speak about his greatness in chinuch all the time. As I mentioned in the beginning, I was not in third grade, but I heard parents speak about these booklets that is part of the chinuch, and sometimes, although it doesn't sound fair, but it's the tzaddikim that have to suffer for the sake of the community. I don't know what it was. I remember where I was. I was in Eretz Yisrael. I was either just before getting on a bus or on a bus. And it was a very emotional moment for me. I wasn't expecting it, really. I thought he would have a refuah. there's example, the summer before, what's interesting is that he taught us Masechta Beya. And he also gave me a sefer of all Mishnayos Masechta Beya. It happened to be that in 12th grade near Yisrael, the Masechta that I learned, the Kiyas, was Masechta Beya. We took a Masechta Bechina on it, but I did not completely complete the Masechta. There was the final Amud, the final few lines. That I completed in St. Louis, in the hospital, by his bed. And his children told me that it was so meaningful to him. And I was looking back at Masechta Beya today, and the fact that he gave me that Masechta Beya, I was thinking like that, maybe to learn that in his schus. I know it's been many years. When he was in the hospital, so he was hooked up, to an IV, and it was a very tense situation. So he somehow had someone put vodka, take a bag, and make it look like vodka was hooked up. Do you know what vodka is? It's alcohol, like wine, like alcohol. He made it look like that was hooked up into his IV. It wasn't. But then the nurse came in, and he said, like, I'm really not feeling well. Can you just make sure like it's hooked up right and like it's the right medicine? And the nurse like she almost went bananas. She's like, what is this? Who hooked this up? Of course you're not feeling well. This is, and then, so that was the joke. Like, okay, it was hooked up right. He just made it look like that. So, I guess the laughs are, he knew who to do it with, and like some people would not appreciate that at all. They would just be angry at him for doing that. But some people would get a good laugh at it. So for like driving the nurse crazy, like making the nurse think that alcohol was going in to his body, getting drunk when like there was some medical mistake. But really there wasn't. He made it look like that, but there really wasn't. Although he was known for chinuch, I think he was much greater than people will ever realize. People a lot of times say, how could it's not possible for a child to appreciate him. We heard this by the Hazkara for Rabbi ZatzaL. I know people say that, but sometimes it's actually the child who appreciates them the most. Maybe in learning, maybe in that case, maybe regarding the learning skills, certain areas, the child didn't appreciate it. But you have to realize there's certain things that are going on in the classroom that only the students know. The parents, the community, they hear the stories about the Pope. They hear those things, but they don't see the Mesiras Nefesh that this one Rebbe is putting forth. No one was at the Young Israel at night to see these shiurim that he had. I mean, maybe my father was there, but this wasn't like, there was no publicity going on, nothing. This was total L'Shem Shemaim. Nobody knew about these large Shabbos sudas that he had at his house. It was on the way to the old Young Israel. Nobody knew about these things. It was completely L'Shem Shemaim. So there's two Nekudos over here. It's not just he was like a malach in the sense that there was one mission, and one mission only. That was to be Mekarev, or to be mashpia people to the love of Yiddishkeit, not just what he's hired to teach, but he did everything. Yiddishkeit in all days of the week. Shabbos, there was other things in other days of the week as well. And the other thing is that everything was done l'shem shemaim. There's one story, a very cool story. So there was a day that Rav Shach, I think it was Rav Shach, he came out, I think he put Steinsaltz in Cher. No, Steinsaltz, he put the Steinsaltz Gemara in Cher. Now, in my house, we had a whole set of Steinsaltz. My father was a big fan of Steinsaltz, and Cherem is... I don't know exactly. It's like just no one's allowed to have it, basically. Either you're not allowed to have it, or if you have it, you're cursed, or I don't know. I think we have a book here that was put in Cherem somewhere. I can't find it right now, but I tried to get rid of it, but it popped up back on the shelf. So, anyway, so it was one of my cousins. So here's the thing. Rav Shach put the Steinsaltz Gemara in Cherem, but the only people, I don't know, but I saw the other day that a Mordechai Gifter actually was upset. It seemed like Mordechai Gifter defended the Steinsaltz, and I wanted to read more about that. But the way the Cherem works is that it's only Chal on the people who subscribe to that gadol. So it doesn't apply to the Hasidic circles. So my cousin, it was Neil Weintraub, he immediately, when it was put in Cherem, he called up Rabbi Pollack and he said, I have to get all my Steinsaltzes out of the house. It's in Cherem. Could I drop them off by your house? Okay. So, great, right? Pollack, he's Hasidic, he's Lubavitch, he doesn't hold to the Cherem. So it sounds great, Rabbi. So Neil got the whole set of Steinsaltz Gemaras. He dropped them off at Rabbi Pollack's house. Okay? He drops them off. And then Rabbi Pollack said, by the way, while you're busy gathering everything that was put in Cherem and dropping them off, do you mind giving us all of your your television set? Like, so that he wouldn't give over. But the humor in that is, I don't know. It's just there's humor in that. I think according to Rabbi Tendler in Ner Yisrael, Gedolim, I wasn't around that. Gedolim maybe put television in Cherem from the very beginning. Basically, if you're going to get rid of something from your house, I guess he's saying, the television should be first to go. I think it was Rabbi Pollack who got Bob Richards. Meteorologist Bob Richards came to the school, which was amazing because there was some connection between him and Channel 5. Although I kind of think it was Channel 2.
Channel 2 on what?
On television. I don't know. He did his weather report with all of us in the background, and Safta Lois has it on video. I wish everyone a good night. Have a gewaldige Yontif, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Torah with Simcha.